Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Amie, and if you're not new here, welcome back. So this video is being filmed on a Monday, even though it technically should have been going out today. And that's because I made the really silly decision to go on a 21-mile hike with no previous experience, which is quite frankly the silliest decision I've ever made. And there is no shortage of silly decisions when it comes to me over the course of my life. But I decided, you know what? I would love to go on this 21-mile hike, even though I've never hiked a day in my life. And so for the last few days, my body decided to not let me forget just how stupid the decision was. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy that I set a challenge for myself and I was able to achieve it. But I have never been so aware of my own legs in my whole life. And right now, filming this is the first time in about 3 days where I've actually felt like I could stand fully and walk without like feeling like I would cave over. So I did the hike on Friday. Saturday was a shit show. It took me, I think, 15 minutes to go down the stairs and 15 minutes to come back up. I couldn't stand. I couldn't walk very well. And also, somehow, I was also possessed to do household cleaning despite the fact that I was barely functioning. So, more havoc on the body, but don't worry. I'm almost back to normal. So, my body doesn't at least hate me as much as I think it does. And in hindsight, I'm glad I did it, even though the after effects were such that I will never forget in my life. In this video, we're going to be covering everything that I read in April and May because I didn't do an April reading wrap up because I didn't read a lot in April and I just didn't think I should do a whole dedicated video to it. And I also didn't read a lot in May, so I thought it would be best to combine it. And then we're also going to be talking about everything that is on my TBR for this month that I will hopefully get to. So, yeah, let's get started. So I was looking at my Goodreads in preparation for this video and I realized that I only read one book in April. So it was a bit of a blur. I don't remember what was going on in that month. I don't remember what I did. I don't know what could have led me to read just one book, but that is what happened. Well, the book that I read was one of my favorites of the year and it's called On the Edge and it's part of the CU hockey series that I've previously talked about in other videos. And this is book 3. And this book is about Atlas and Vas. So if you've read the series, you know that Vas is Carter's best friend. And I was very interested in a book about him because he piqued my interest when I read other books in the series. He's German and he's just really sweet and really kind. And he's super like generous with his time. He loves his friends. He loves being around his friends. And he's just a generally very uplifting person to be around. And so everybody loves him. He's the kind of person where like nobody has a bad word to say about him. And if you don't like him, you're the problem. He's just generally a crowd pleaser. His teammates love him, his family loves him. He comes from a really nice family, maybe just not as emotionally tactile as he is, but a nice family nonetheless. And then he meets Atlas in a class. And Atlas is best described as a feral alley cat. He is like a porcupine. He's so prickly and opposite of the sunshine character. And he's going through his own things. And he is very insecure in his ability to accept love. And then you have Vas, who is just so giving. Showing love to people or being kind to people is kind of like second nature. It's like him breathing. It's just come very easily to him. And so the contrast with Atlas, who is very, very suspicious of people like Vas, I thought was really good in the story. Atlas just wanted to find every reason not to like him. So he started off, there's the thing about him hating Vas's like polo shirts or like him hating how neat he was. And he was like, he's a polar opposite of me and I hate him by default and, you know, that kind of thing. And then Vas would always bring him like an apple every day. He was purposely closing himself off because he was allergic to vulnerability. And by acknowledging that Atlas was kind, it was kind of like inviting him into his heart. And he really wanted to keep his heart like locked in. He just couldn't resist Vas any longer. And the best things about this book have mostly to do with Vas. He's written as a character on the spectrum and he's also asexual. And I think it's just so refreshing to read a book about a male character who is on the spectrum but also asexual. Because I'm not on the spectrum, I wouldn't know if this was accurate rep, but I've read books in which the characters are supposed to be on the spectrum, but it feels like you could be reading about a character who wasn't. I don't know how to explain it. Almost like the way that they come across on page doesn't reflect the fact that they should be on the spectrum. And obviously it's a spectrum, so different people act different ways. But I love the fact that the tone in this book significantly indicated the thought process of somebody who would be on the spectrum, the way that they process words and actions, the way that their thoughts come to them, the reasons why they do things that differ from a neurotypical person. And then an added layer was the fact that Vas was German and his first language was German, and he had been learning how to speak English because he had obviously come to America for university. And I like the fact that, again, even the book was obviously in English, but it felt like a book written in the perspective of somebody who didn't speak English as a first language. The way that he would put words together, or the way that he would say things in a way that a native English speaker just wouldn't, just because he's a bit unsure of himself. Even though the English that he speaks is more than decent, I love the fact that I could sense his insecurity, maybe not insecurity, but his reluctance in expressing himself in hopes that he doesn't get it right. And I love the fact that it really came across in this book. As prickly as Atlas was, he was entirely respectful of Vas and his asexuality and not pushing him, and looking for ways in which the relationship could work for both of them, because obviously Vas is on the asexual spectrum, but Atlas is not. And I think it was really, really interesting to see how he would always be like, don't pressure yourself. Also, Vas is very apologetic. So he has this tendency to apologize for things even he shouldn't, like his asexuality. And it's like, well, it's not like you chose this. Like, you're not less deserving or less of a human being just because you happen to be asexual. And it was just really nice to read a book about that. You know, I love a book that just centers respect and consent. And there was a lot of heart in this book. And you know me, if a book is full of heart, it's a winner for me. I love a book that tugs on my heartstrings, because I feel like if it's not tugging on my heartstring, what's the point? It's a romance at the end of the day. And I absolutely just adore this book. Another part of the book that I loved was the inclusion of Vass's friend group. So that's Carter, who is his best friend, Zeke, who you will know if you've read the series. Zeke is Carter's boyfriend. And then you have Max from the book before, and Luke, who is Max's boyfriend. I don't read many books that incorporate male friendships or like a male friendship group and the way that they treat each other. And I think JJ Mulder is very good at that. Even in her previous series, which I've talked about, there is just this strong familial love and loyalty that lies between the boys. The friendships that they have don't feel replaceable, they don't feel superficial, they feel deep. Like the way that he talked about them, the way that he almost like reverences them. He's so thankful for his friendship with these boys. He loves them so much. He expresses it in such an earnest way, in a way that is just so just devoid of ego, it's devoid of any stereotypical like male, I don't show my feelings, or I can't love another man platonically or anything like that. When he's around them, the dialogue in his head regarding them is honestly so sweet. Moda just has a way of writing male friendships that is just incredible. And I want to say that it's one of the reasons why I keep on coming back to her books, and a reason why I keep on wanting to eat up everything they write, because I just love that found family element that they all seem to have. There was a scene where Max tells him what has happened to him, because if you've read Max's book, you know that he experienced something particularly traumatizing. And Max talks to Vas about it because they go to a party together that requires Max to, step out of his comfort zone. And it was just moments like that where I'm just like, friendship is truly a beautiful thing. And I love the fact that the friendships that JJ Mulder writes about feel as essential as the romantic partnerships. They feel like if I didn't have these people in my life, I'd also be extremely sad and extremely devastated. And I love the fact that the love between the boys come across so well in the books. And they're also quite individual to each character. So each character feels individual, feels unique. And then their take on how they see their friends and the positions that they occupy within the friendship group also feel great. And I just loved it. So it may have been the only book that I read in April, but I absolutely loved it. For me, JJ Mulder has fast become an author for me, because I just can't get enough. And I just love the fact that this was yet another ace for me. I think it will end up being in my favorites of the year. I think it will end up being there for sure. It's just such a beautiful book. I also love Atlas's relationship with his brothers. That was really sweet. He had some problems with his parents and things. And I'm very much looking forward to the next book, which features a story between Atlas's roommate, I can't remember his name at this very moment, who also is really sweet, and Marcos, who is Max's roommate. So that's going to be interesting. I believe that comes out in July, so I'm patiently waiting, because I will be reading that as soon as it gets out. I need to read everything JJ Mulder writes at this point, because I've enjoyed every single book I've read by them. I just want to continue because I can't get enough. It's books like these that really make you realize why you derive so much pleasure out of reading. So yeah. So next on my list is a book called Out of the Storm by Logan Sage Adams, and it's a book that I discovered while I had Kindle Unlimited. And it's a book about Jeff, who's a mall custodian, and Gary. He's like a lecturer by day, and then he kind of does his radio show as a bit of a hobby. And then Jeff is like a custodian, who chases storms as a hobby. And I think this book had a unique start because it starts off with Jeff, discovering this hobby of his, chasing storms, after a particularly traumatic event takes place in his life. I don't recall a lot of books that start in the way that this one does. So immediately it made quite an impression on me. And so, because of his previous experiences, Jeff doesn't particularly want to date because he's afraid of the relationship getting to the point where he's going to have to divulge the fact that he's been through this traumatizing event, which has prevented him from wanting to be close to somebody, even though it's something that he craves. And it's really quite sad. And then he meets Gary, who is very happy go lucky because Gary is scared of being alone. And so he latches onto people quite quickly. And a lot of the time, it's put people off him. And so when he meets Jeff and he immediately bonds with him, he's also scared of like pushing him away by being too clingy. And I really like the fact that they were very different, but they were what the other person needed. One of my favorite things about this book is there are so many books where a character goes through something dramatic. They're clearly dealing with it or haven't had a chance to deal with it. They find someone, they fall in love, and then all of a sudden the trauma disappears, almost as if it didn't exist. And I find that it minimizes the trauma. It was very much a slow burn in terms of them falling in love. They would still encounter problems that were quite realistic. So the book felt very raw in the sense that even though they were making progress, there were still setbacks in a way that is entirely normal. It's like if you've had something majorly traumatic happen to you, and this happened on both their ends, even though it was for different reasons. But if you've had something traumatic happen to you, you're not going to all of a sudden wake up and it's magically gone. You're going to have moments where you remember it and it triggers something, or you're going to have moments where you're sad because being sad about what you've been through is actually a part of the healing process. And I love the fact that they encounter these problems and they work through them through communication, and they actually have a genuine conversation about, hey, the best way to get through these issues or for us to be together or to work together in a harmonious way is if we talk to each other, as uncomfortable as those conversations may be in the moment. I think I love the fact that it was very much a part of the book, them learning to be comfortable with each other but experiencing setbacks and experiencing triggers. And I love the fact that there was a lot of crying in the book. There was a lot of emotional expression, just raw moments between them that felt very real. Like if you were encountering somebody who had experienced the same things, this is probably how it would go, even though everybody's unique and everybody's different. There were also lots of funny moments. It was not devoid of humor. So don't worry. If you're worried about it potentially being sad from beginning to end, it's not the case. They had plenty of light-hearted moments together. I love the fact that they got into each other's hobbies. So Jeff really got into the radio hosting of the show, hosting the radio show that Gary does every evening. And then Gary got into like storm chasing. They had great friends as well. I particularly loved Gary's best friend, who similarly went through what Jeff had previously gone through. And I love the fact that she served as a beacon of hope for what could be possible in terms of healing. Even though this book takes place in the 80s, I think in 1985 in Ohio, I love the fact that there was talk of therapy. And Gary's best friend introduces Jeff to her therapist, and he goes to see how he could tackle what had happened to him. And I really love that. I love the talk of like therapy, mental health, but not like explicitly mentioning mental health, because at the end of the day, it was still the 80s. And it's one of the best books that I've ever read, I think. It's funny how you read certain authors and you're like, I have to read everything they've written, just because, it's possible to not be able to relate to characters and still wholeheartedly feel for them. I suppose that's just empathy. But I felt for both Gary and Jeff in their individual struggles. As you begin to root for these characters. You just want the best for them, and you want them to overcome their situation and just find happiness at the end of the day. For me, I get so frustrated that books like these are not more popular. I think I like books that feel raw, honest, well researched. Like there's a lot of heart put into it, a lot of effort. I keep on saying that there are books that I can't imagine not having found just because of the sheer impact that they've had on me. But I do love a nickname in a book as well. And there was no shortage of them in this book. And they were funny nicknames, some were really sweet. I highly recommend this book if you're just looking for something deeply emotional, something that you will be moved by, something that you can enjoy. Because also it was quite a quick read for me as well. I don't remember it dragging at any point. The more you read it, the more gems you find. And I'm just really excited at the prospect of reading it again because it was a debut, which I commend them for, because wow, if this is your debut, I can only imagine that it's going to go up from here. And so because I immediately felt the need to read everything that Logan Sage Adams had ever written, I went on to read Our Own Light. And this book is about Floyd and Oliver. So Oliver is from a really wealthy family, but again, a family that's devoid of warmth and love, and he's lost. Floyd is a miner, and so Oliver moves over to the mining town that they live in to start a new life and discover if mining is for him. And so he basically meets Floyd, and he's immediately taken by Floyd, and they like each other. And Floyd becomes something of a mentor to him, showing him the ropes and just being there for him. Floyd is in a marriage of convenience. So for reasons that you'll find out if you read the book, he is married to his childhood best friend, and they have a daughter together, but they're married in name alone. So when Oliver comes to town and Floyd's wife begins to figure out that there's a relationship between them, she's encouraging of it to develop. And there's no secret, and which I liked. I liked the fact that it was not really a secret. It was not anything that he ever hid from her. He's moved away to provide a life for his wife and his daughter, so Effie and Joe. And they've only recently begun to feel comfortable and a bit settled. And he's quite happy with the progress that they've made given what they ran away from. So he's a bit reluctant to have anything shake that, because as you know, when you've worked so hard for something and even though that something may not be what you want, you're very protective of it because you just know how much effort you've put into it, and it's finally feeling settled. And even though it's not the life that you may have envisioned for yourself, it is still a life worth having. And so his struggles in the book come from the fact that he doesn't want anything to shake the foundation that he's struggled so hard to build. He also hasn't grieved his other best friend who he was in love with, who he had also lost, in mining, because obviously it's a very dangerous job. And Oliver is just running away from family responsibilities because he's never felt like he's belonged. He's never felt particularly wanted. He's the kind of child where you know that they had him just so that they could continue on the family business and the family name. There was never any effort put into his parents knowing him or loving him. And so he's also lost. And this book is just such an emotional book full of complexity. Every character is complex. Every character felt like time was taken to build. And I'm not just talking Floyd and Oliver because they're the main characters, so it makes sense that a little more effort would have been put into them. But even side characters like Effie and Joe and Auntie Betty, they felt integral to the story as well. I like when authors put genuine effort into their side characters. They may not have plans to write like sequels about those characters. You can feel that they love those characters probably as much as they like their main characters. And that's how it felt to me. I loved the relationship between Effie and Floyd. It was just such a beautiful relationship. I love the fact that the love that existed between them, although not romantic, was not ever diminished. They loved each other so much and they were so proud of the life that they had built, as they should. And even though there was this undercurrent of sadness, there was just this love and joy that existed within their home that anybody would be lucky to have. And you could honestly understand why Floyd was so resistant to change, because he had this life that he deeply loved and he was with his best friend. And, it's hard to explain a book that you love so much. And Oliver was just so earnest and sweet and kind. And he was a bit bolder in his approach, which makes sense. He's come from a wealthy family. He doesn't really have that much to lose. He's not lacking in anything but love, if that makes any sense. So it sort of made him more flexible in his approach to life. And it was a great balance to have like Oliver, who's less resistant to change, and Floyd, who's a little more like stuck in his ways, but ultimately still sweet. And it's a friendship that develops into a romance, that develops into a found family. I like the fact that even after they got together, they didn't isolate Effie and Joe. They just became a family. Obviously, not your traditional family. It's a unique kind of family setup, but no less important, no less lovable. What this book I think symbolizes for me is that something doesn't have to be cookie cutter. Something doesn't have to be perfect to be worth it. Things can just be worth it because they are and they work for you, and there's no one size fits all to love and what that looks like. And I'm particularly growing more drawn to books that are not so cookie cutter and not so traditional and not so just like what you expect to see in a romance. I love books that are pushing boundaries. And it's not even that she's trying to be controversial, because this is probably a lot of people's reality. It's just more so that she's writing about something that not a lot of people are writing about, and I love it. There is just such a foundation of respect that runs through that I just really appreciate. The anguish felt real, their struggles felt real. It wasn't just a, oh, we fell in love, everything is easy now. There were steps that they had to take to get to where they needed to be. This book is phenomenal. Logan Sage Adams is a phenomenal writer. I've only read 2 of their books, but I think I can confidently say that these are the books that I think need to blow up. And I'm very sad that they don't. And I hope that by me talking about them, even though I don't have a big audience myself, I hope that by me talking about them, it paves the way for us to start, paying more attention to the books that deserve so much more attention, but are not given the same kind of shine that other books are. And I love the fact that it was called Our Own Light, because it truly was their own light. I would love to read a book about Auntie Betty, who is Oliver's aunt, who he hasn't really grown up close to, but he developed a relationship with her, and it ended up being really, really sweet. And she was a really interesting character as well. I would love to master the art of talking about books I feel strongly for, because I don't feel like I have. If you can give me opinions on how you think I describe these books, I would be very grateful, because I don't know how I'm coming across. Because I feel quite overwhelmed because of just how much they make me feel, that I feel like I'm not doing a good enough job describing them. But when it comes to romance books right now, these are the kind of books that are pulling me in, as opposed to, not that the popular books aren't good. They are, but there's just so many things like them that already exist and that are already, popular and already getting so much shine, that I feel like it kind of repels me away from them. These books are just where I'm at the moment. And if I had to pick one word to describe Logan Sage Adams books, beautiful would be it. And beauty is not perfect all the time. I'm just so glad that I discovered these books, because they truly are something. And then the final book that I read in May is called And Then He Kissed Me, and it's by C.M. Daniels. Again, I've hit a streak with books like these. It's a book set in London in the 1960s on a council estate. It's a story between Tommy and Eric. So Tommy works in the factory on the council estate, and basically Eric's father has banished him to the council estate because he's unsupportive of Eric's lifestyle. And the subtext of that, obviously, is given the time period and wealthy families at the time, it's because he's discovered that Eric is queer and he doesn't like it. So he basically has sent him away because he's ashamed of him. And his father is just genuinely a terrible human being. And so he comes to this council estate and he meets Tommy. And he gets along really well with the group that Tommy belongs to. They don't really expect it because they hear his accent and think he's a snob. But as it turns out, he's a lovely human being despite his ridiculously disgusting parents. And so they really form a bond and it goes from there. One of the things I really loved about this book is learning about the mod scene, which I didn't know anything about. It's always nice, I think, apart from the romance, the discovery of something that I've never heard of before is usually a big pull for me when I read books like these. And I didn't know anything about like the mod scene and the music that they listen to and the clothes that they wear, and how there's a really big identity of the people that belong to this scene. So I love that it was a big part of the book. I love that there was commentary on the way that Black people were treated back in the day, even just like racism. I love the fact that it was sprinkled in the book as like a talking point and a conversation point. Tommy has a best friend called Mick, and I loved the coming out scenes embedded in the story. So it was first Mick coming out to Tommy, coming out to Mick, and then them coming out to their friendship group. I really liked it because it was just not a big deal. The friendship group were like, oh, we already suspected, or even if they didn't suspect, they're like, we accept you. It was not a big thing about them making a big deal out of it. So I love the fact that even though it was a crime, basically, to be the way that they were, within their friendship group, they could be who they were without fear of people finding out. It's again that found family element that exists in so many queer books that I love, where they have people outside of the relationship who are looking out for them and who are supporting them and who are loving them for who they are, especially when they come from a background where they are immediately discarded or worse, put in danger for daring to be anything other than straight man. It was so sweet. Tommy has such a sweet family. His mom in particular, I really loved. She was so sweet and kind. She's like a typical like stoic always providing solutions, but so sweet at the end of the day. His dad was also really sweet as well. They just felt like, again, it's a really heartwarming book. I don't usually like an epilogue in a book, but the epilogue in this book, I won't spoil, but something major happens for them later on in life. You know, something that they would have done if not for the rules that existed at that time period. And it made me so emotional. I love the fact that they were able to do this. And one of the things about stories like these is that you know that they are reflective of real people that would have existed years ago. And you know that there are people who either had a similar experience or would have wanted to have a similar experience. It makes you think of them. There's a level of anger, I think, that I feel whenever I read a book like this, in the sense that why can't people just let people be sometimes? But I'm so glad that literature like this exists. The fact that I might get to learn something that I typically would not have learned about by just existing in the world as I do. And so books like these remind you of your own privileges, remind you just to look out for people, be an ally, the ways in which you can be an ally, you know, that actually don't take that much effort if you think about it. Just easy things that you can do every day to make sure that people are protected, especially in this day and age where there's so much instability around tolerance and people. Just so simple ways that you can be your brother or sister's keeper. And I really, really did like this book for those reasons. There was the love story, and then there was the music element, the fashion element, which I just really liked. It was such a unique book in its premise. I've not read a book like it, so that was really interesting. I would love to read a story about Mick. I do think that she has one in the works. Let me have a look. Yes, she has a book about Mick in the works and it's coming out next year. So I will definitely be reading that. I didn't read the premise of the book. Why? I don't know. Mick was initially who I thought Eric would end up with, but he didn't. So I'm really excited. Mick is a really lovely character as well. He's very lovable. Like you can't help but love him as well. And I'm excited to see how his love story will unfold. It was such a sweet book. Their friends were just lovely. And again, this is an author I hope blows up because they need to. I think talented people should blow up. It's just how I think the world should work. I'm just loving this stage of finding gems like these and getting to share them. Although my platform is small, I hope that people will give them a shot and also read these books because I've really enjoyed them and I hope you will too. Okay, so let's talk about TBR. I don't usually talk about TBRs because even though I am typically a planner, my plans usually derail when it comes to books. I can't stick to a TBR list as much as I try, but I'm going to try to in this month. I've been wanting to do a comprehensive video about Emily Henry, but I haven't read all of her books. I've read People We Meet on Vacation, I've read Beach Read, I've read Book Lovers, and I've read Happy Place. And I don't particularly know how I feel about Emily Henry just yet because I loved Book Lovers. Book Lovers made it into my favorite romance books of all time. So I really love that book. I remember enjoying Beach Read. I don't think I loved it even nearly as much as Book Lovers, but I did enjoy reading it at the time. And it was at the very beginning of my romance book. I remember disliking People We Meet on Vacation and I remember hating Happy Place. So Emily Henry is a bit of a conundrum for me, almost like a very polarizing author. The thing is, I know she's a good author. I know that she can write, but I don't love all of her stories. She's not an autobi author in the way that other authors are. I don't know where I fall in the sense that I've loved one book, I've liked another one, I've disliked another one, and I've hated another one. I would like to read Funny Story by Emily Henry. I would also like to read Great Big Beautiful Life just to see how I fall because I feel like by reading those books, it will put into perspective what my final thoughts on her are. And I think it will make me understand whether or not her writing style is for me or whether it was just like a one or two hit wonder. And I really just don't vibe that much with her because she's so popular that sometimes it's hard to find yourself not particularly liking and also the way that other people do. I would like to read Dream Calm by Chimamanda and Ngozi Adichie because she's an author by author for me. She's one of my favorite authors of all time, and I just feel like I should read it as soon as I can. So Dream Count by her. I would like to finally read Legends and Lattes because there are a few YouTubers that I follow that I generally agree with their tastes who have loved it. So I would love to see if I can get into that as soon as I can. I would also like to read, so I would like to complete two series that I started. Another book I'd like to read is Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi because I actually read and fully enjoyed Homegoing. So I'd like to get to reading Transcendent Kingdom, even though I've been putting it off for a while. And then I would also like to read Redemptor by Jordan Ifueko, I believe. I've read the first book in the series and I liked it. I didn't love it as much as other people, but I did like it. What have you guys been reading so far? What have you loved? Oh yeah, I also want to highlight a book. I've read this book before and it's called Confident and Killing It, and it's by one of my favorite people. It's by Tiwalola Ogunlesi, and she is a confidence coach. I met her a few years ago and I'm just obsessed with everything that she posts and everything that she writes and her journey towards being confident. So I would like to read this book again and actually give a thorough review of it. It's more like a self-help book, which I don't tend to gravitate towards because usually when I'm reading, I'm trying to escape. And this book really makes you confront your issues with confidence. And it's a practical guide. So I would like to read it and give a really good review of it. Someone I just love to support because she's such an amazing person and she's just such a beacon of light. Let's see if we can achieve all of that. Hopefully by this time next month, I will be giving you reviews of each of these books if I'm able to achieve my goals. Fingers crossed. So if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you've been reading. Let's interact. I'm hoping I'm coming across as more confident. I feel like in my past videos I've been quite awkward because being in front of a camera is quite scary. But I feel like I'm at a point where I'm starting to become more comfortable. So I'm really enjoying it and I'm hoping I can integrate more content as I go along. But yeah, thank you so much and I'll see you next time.